Rain drummed against the hospital windows like 1,000 tiny secrets begging to be heard. Maya Wright tightened her grip on her daughter Lily's small hand, her tiny frame shivering from the cold. The nurse at reception glanced up, then did a double take. Maya? Maya Laurent? The nurse asked, her voice laced with surprise. Maya froze. She hadn't heard that name in years, a name she'd shed like a snake sheds its skin. Forcing a smile, she shook her head. No, it's Maya Wright now, she replied, the lie slipping out easily. The same lie she'd used for years to protect Lily. But fate, as always, had other plans. Because walking down the hall, flipping through a chart, was Dr. Nathan Wright, the man she once loved, the man who left her pregnant and alone, unaware of the devastating silence that followed his departure. Nathan couldn't shake the feeling he knew Maya. Their tense encounter at the hospital had stirred something deep within him, a fragmented memory he couldn't quite grasp. Driven by an unsettling intuition, he did something unthinkable for a man of his professional integrity. He swiped Lily's discarded juice box from the waiting room for a DNA test. When the results confirmed she was his world imploded. Flashback to 6 years ago, a younger Nathan, broken and adrift after the sudden, tragic death of his twin brother Daniel, was sent abroad by his parents, Eleanor and Richard Wright. They meticulously intercepted every letter Maya sent, every desperate call she made, ensuring their son remained blissfully unaware of the chaos he'd left behind. Meanwhile, Maya, pregnant and abandoned, lost her scholarship, then her home, then slowly, her very identity. Some silences, she learned, were louder than screams. And Nathan? He never heard hers. The annual Wright Family Charity Gala glittered with champagne flutes and forced smiles. Tasha Vance, Nathan's ex, her eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger, slid a spiked drink into his hand. As he stumbled, disoriented, Maya, ever watchful, intervened, only for him to murmur her name like a prayer, his feverish touch brushing her arm. She took him home, resisting the familiar pull, her resolve a steel wall around her heart. But this time, she was prepared. This time she protected herself. Morning came, brutal and clear. Nathan remembered nothing of the night before, only a throbbing headache and a vague sense of unease. But the security footage didn't lie. Tasha's sly movements, the suspicious glint of a tiny vial. When he confronted her, his rage was volcanic. You could have killed me, Nathan snarled, his voice a low growl. Tasha just smirked, a dangerous glint in her eyes. Or maybe I just wanted you to finally see me, she purred, stepping closer. Before Nathan could react, a vicious slap echoed through the silent mansion. Vanessa Dubois, Maya's fierce best friend, stood there, her hands stinging, her eyes blazing. You obsessive, manipulative sociopath, Vanessa spat, her voice cold and steady. I've been secretly investigating your family for months. That accidental spill in the Blackwood Bayou? Pure fraud. Nathan's mother, Eleanor Wright, a woman of impeccable composure, had spent years orchestrating his life, pulling invisible strings to ensure his greatness. When he confronted her about hiding Maya's letters, her mask finally slipped. She was a distraction. You were meant for greatness, Nathan. A life of power, of influence, not a charity case. Eleanor shrieked, her voice cracking with a raw, ugly desperation. No, Nathan said, his voice quiet but firm. I was meant for her. Meanwhile, Madame Denise Laurent, Maya's eccentric, seemingly harmless pretend mother-in-law, dropped another bombshell. She knew Maya was lying about the marriage. She'd been playing matchmaker all along, a puppet master pulling strings with a strange, hidden agenda. 1 year later, the autumn sun streamed through Lily's bedroom window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Nathan knelt in front of Lily, a tiny glittering ring held in his outstretched hand. Not to replace your mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion, just to stand beside her, if she'll have me. Maya, tears streaming down her face, nodded, a silent yes that spoke volumes. In the background, Vanessa high-fived Madame Denise, a conspiratorial grin spreading across her face. Tasha? Last seen boarding a one-way flight to Siberia, her empire crumbling around her. Love, they learned, wasn't about perfection. It was about fighting for the broken pieces and realizing they still fit. Vanessa sat across from Nathan's old friend, Marcus Thorne, in a dimly lit room, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and desperation. Blueprints of Tasha's family oil rigs were spread across the table. A single lamp flickered as rain pattered rhythmically against rusted metal walls, a melancholic soundtrack to their clandestine meeting. Their accidental spills. Vanessa's voice was low, laced with disgust. All planned. They've been dumping toxic waste for years, paying off inspectors, polluting the land right outside Maya's childhood home. Vanessa slid a USB across the table, footage of Tasha's father, the stoic CEO, brazenly bribing officials in a back alley. But then, a shadow moved outside the door. Someone was listening. A low, guttural cough. "If we expose this," Marcus said, his voice grim, "Tasha's entire empire crumbles. But we need Nathan's medical reports, proof that the spills caused Lily's chronic respiratory illness." The next day at another glittering gala, Tasha accidentally spilled wine on Vanessa, her apologies saccharine sweet, her eyes sharp and calculating as she secretly planted a tiny tracker in Vanessa's purse. The cat and mouse game had begun. Vanessa didn't know it yet, but Nathan's estranged father, Richard Wright, had quietly funded the cleanup bribes, making him complicit in the environmental devastation. When she found out, she would have to choose: expose the truth and destroy Nathan's family, or stay silent and let Lily's suffering go unpunished. Meanwhile, in an opulent Parisian apartment, Madame Denise's son, the pretend husband, lounged in a leather armchair, counting stacks of crisp euro notes. His phone rang, and Denise's steely voice filled the line, cold and unyielding. "Stay in Paris," she commanded. "If you return, the money stops. And believe me, darling, you wouldn't want that." Flashback to 6 years ago, Denise had found Maya, a ghost of her former self, weeping inconsolably over Nathan's sudden disappearance. A shrewd, calculating glint had appeared in Denise's eyes. She had meticulously orchestrated the fake marriage, paying her son, who was actually an actor, to vanish, all to force Nathan to confront his past when he eventually saw Maya again. But her plan had a dark, deeply unsettling edge. Her real son, a charming but troubled young man, had died years ago in a tragic accident, leaving a gaping void in her life. The pretend husband was merely a pawn in her elaborate game. She'd been manipulating Maya's life, pulling her strings to fill that void. And Lily, innocent Lily, was the granddaughter she never had. When Nathan, piecing together fragments of overheard conversations and subtle clues, finally uncovered the chilling truth, Denise collapsed, sobbing hysterically. "I just wanted someone to call me grandmother." "Again," she wailed, her grief raw and unrestrained. Maya, torn between a searing fury and a profound pity, had to decide if forgiveness, after such calculated deception, was even possible. Nathan's estranged father, Richard Wright, a man consumed by the demons of his past, knelt in the dim candlelight of a confession booth, clutching Lily's medical file in his trembling hands. A priest placed a comforting hand on his shoulder, his voice gentle. "God forgives those who seek redemption, my son," the priest murmured. Richard's guilt was crushing, a physical weight on his soul. He had not only hidden Maya's letters, severing Nathan from his true love, but his own oil investments were directly responsible for the environmental toxins that had triggered Lily's devastating illness. Now, in a cruel twist of fate, he was a perfect match for her liver transplant. His liver, however, was damaged from years of heavy drinking, making the surgery a perilous gamble with his own life. In the chaos surrounding Richard's sudden illness, Marcus, still secretly investigating Tasha, stumbled upon a devastating secret. Nathan's late twin, Daniel, had had a clandestine affair with Tasha, and she, Tasha, had known about Maya's pregnancy all along. Her relentless vendetta against Maya, her obsessive pursuit of Nathan, was fueled by a twisted jealousy. Jealousy over Nathan loving Maya instead of her. "Daniel promised me Nathan!" Tasha shrieked at Maya during a tense confrontation, her face contorted with rage. "Then you stole him!" Nathan reeled. His brother's betrayal ran deeper than he could have ever imagined. The heaviest weights, he realized, were never the ones we saw coming. Vanessa clutched her stomach as a fierce contraction hit, doubling her over. The USB drive containing the irrefutable oil fraud evidence slipped from her fingers, clattering to the hospital floor just as armed men, their faces grim, kicked down the door to her maternity suite. Marcus, without hesitation, took a bullet, shielding her body with his own. "They're Tasha's men!" Vanessa screamed, her voice a guttural cry of pain and terror. She knew about the baby. The baby was Marcus's. But biologically, there was a terrifying possibility it could be Nathan's, from a drunken college night Vanessa had sworn never to reveal. When Vanessa hemorrhaged catastrophically after giving birth, only Tasha's jailed father, a man with a rare and specific blood type, possessed the blood needed to save her. Marcus, pale and weak, held the newborn, hooked to transfusion tubes himself, whispering to the tiny, fragile bundle, "You'll know your mom fought like hell for you, little one." The custody hearing for Daniel Jr., a 5-year-old boy with the undeniable right chin, was a theatrical nightmare. Tasha, smug and triumphant, slammed a birth certificate onto the judge's bench. "Your brother's son deserves half of everything," she declared, her voice ringing with false righteousness. But security footage, secretly unearthed by Vanessa's diligent brother, revealed Eleanor, cold and calculating, paying Tasha to fake the pregnancy years ago. Yet in a shocking twist, the child was actually Nathan's, conceived from a frozen sperm sample stolen after his brother's death. A twisted attempt by Eleanor to ensure a pure, right heir. Then came the emotional bomb. The boy, young Daniel Jr., had Lily's exact rare blood disorder. They were unknowingly siblings, both suffering from the insidious poison that ran deeper than anyone had ever suspected. "You made my children sick just to control me?" Nathan roared, his face contorted in disbelief and raw agony as the full scope of his mother's depravity finally hit him. Eleanor, now in an orange jumpsuit, a chilling smile on her face, smashed a gas line with her high heel. The explosion rocked the pediatric ward where Lily and Daniel Jr. were recovering, the flames licking at the windows. She had deliberately poisoned the oil field near Maya's childhood home years ago. That was why both Nathan's children were ill. Covered in ash and soot, Maya, her face streaked with tears and grime, carried both children down a swaying ladder as Eleanor's maniacal screams echoed from the burning building. "My son was supposed to marry royalty, not some charity case. You ruined everything." Days later, Madame Denise accidentally overdosed on sedatives after signing over her entire fortune to Lily. But the suicide note, clutched in her hand, smelled faintly of jasmine, Tasha's signature perfume. The IV bag had suspicious puncture marks. Vanessa's military-trained brother, a former medic, immediately recognized the needlework as Eleanor's, who had been a nurse in her youth. "Check the wedding album," Denise had whispered to Maya just before she slipped away, her eyes wide with a desperate urgency. Inside, a faded photograph of a young Eleanor holding baby Nathan, her face serene, next to Madame Denise in a hospital gown. The horrifying truth clicked into place. Madame Denise was Eleanor's sister. They both had loved Richard Wright, a love that had fractured their family and poisoned their lives. Denise's dead son was a meticulously faked identity. He was actually the family accountant, the very man who had helped hide the oil fraud. Then came the most agonizing revelation of all. DNA tests proved Nathan and Maya were cousins. Their love story, so passionately fought for, was doomed from the start, tainted by generations of family secrets and lies. Maya packed 2 suitcases, one for Switzerland, where Lily could get experimental treatment, a last desperate hope for a cure, the other for Nathan, containing divorce papers and a vial of Daniel Jr.'s stem cells. A potential cure for Lily, an agonizing gift from a poisoned past. Some loves, she realized, were oceans, too deep to survive, too vast to forget. The music box version of their college song played, then cracked mid-note, a final, discordant farewell. Vanessa woke with a gasp, her newborn's IV bag empty, the heart monitor flatlining. On the floor, glinting in the pale moonlight, was a single pearl earring. Eleanor's signature style, filled with Lily's blood. Eleanor had been siphoning stem cells from both babies to create a pure right heir in a black market lab, a twisted vision of eugenics. Worse, the stolen cells were being grafted onto Daniel's cryogenically frozen corpse, Tasha's years-long project to resurrect her true love. Daniel, let Eleanor play God, a shadowy figure hissed from the doorway, or watch Lily drown in her own fluids by dawn. Marcus, bleeding but determined, discovered chilling 1978 intake records. Two identical Eleanor Wrights admitted after giving birth. One escaped. One was lobotomized. The Eleanor who raised Nathan was the wrong twin. The real mother had died in that asylum years ago. Madame Denise hadn't faked her son's death. The lobotomized Eleanor, consumed by madness, had smothered him, thinking he was Richard's love child with another woman. Current Eleanor had been implanting false memories in Nathan via his migraine medication, twisting his perception of reality. All family portraits showed Eleanor's reflection, but in one vintage photo, her mirror image wore a different necklace, a subtle, chilling clue. An 87-year-old Richard Wright, frail and ravaged, gasped into a camera, his skin bubbling with the same lesions Lily had as a child. The poison was never in the oil, he rasped, his eyes wide with a terrifying realization. It's in the right genes. I infected you all too. A gunshot. The screen went black. Then, a child's laughter. The video file's metadata showed it was recorded in 1983, 40 years before Richard's death. On a desk in the background, a snow globe with Maya's childhood home inside. Every firstborn Wright twin, it turned out, died at age 28. Nathan's brother wasn't the first. The surviving twin, according to the ancient, horrifying ritual, must consume the other's marrow to break the curse. Nathan's migraines? His dead brother's consciousness fighting to take over. Nathan, his eyes flashing black with a terrifying, otherworldly glow, injected himself with Daniel Jr.'s spinal fluid as Maya watched in horror. "Hello, Maya." A voice both familiar and utterly alien slithered from his lips. "Did you miss me?" Lily's music box played backwards, a discordant, nightmarish tune. Fade to crimson. Round and round the family tree. Rot the roots and you'll be free. An echoing scream. The audio cut abruptly. Nathan stood over his brother's exhumed casket, a syringe of Daniel Jr.'s stem cells clutched in his trembling hand. The wind howled through cracked marble angels, a mournful dirge. Maya, her face etched with a desperate resolve, tackled him, the syringe shattering on stone. "This isn't science. It's a curse," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "Look what it's done to us." A flashback montage flickered through her mind. Eleanor's meticulously kept journal revealing the truth. The Wright curse was just radiation poisoning from their first illegally built oil rig. The twin deaths? Convenient cover-ups for generations of industrial crimes and their devastating health consequences. Tasha, now half mad with grief and obsession, strapped Lily to a cold medical table beside Daniel's preserved corpse. Vanessa burst in, her newborn stem cells in a cooler, the only match left to save Lily. "You'll thank me when your daughter becomes the first immortal Wright," Tasha shrieked, her eyes wild with a terrifying madness as she prepared to inject Lily. Nathan burst through the door, wielding an axe. Not for violence, but to smash the cryogenic chamber, releasing Daniel's body to decay naturally, to finally break the cycle of unnatural preservation. Lily's monitor flatlined as Tasha injected her with an untested serum. Then the power failed, plunging the room into darkness. In the suffocating blackness, a child's voice whispered, eerily clear, "Daddy, why is Uncle Danny crying?" The backup lights flickered on, revealing a horrifying sight. Daniel's corpse, its face frozen in death, had tears rolling down its decaying cheeks. Maya knelt, her hands clasped, as Lily's new stem cells, donated by a brave and selfless Vanessa, took hold. Slowly, miraculously, Lily's breathing steadied, her skin regaining a healthy color. Nathan, humbled and irrevocably changed, signed over his entire fortune to demolish the poisoned oil fields. vowing to dedicate his life to healing the land and its people. Eleanor Wright was found catatonic in the asylum's locked wing, clutching a faded photo of the real Eleanor, her murdered twin. Her will, discovered later, funded a pediatric hospital with one chilling condition: no Wright may ever step foot inside. The family, Maya, Nathan, Lily, Vanessa, Marcus, and their child, watched the sunrise from a toxin-free clinic, a beacon of hope against the receding darkness. Nathan slipped Maya an unopened 1983 letter, his father's confession, sealed for decades, finally delivered. "The poison was in our greed, not our genes," Richard's trembling handwriting read. "Break the cycle. Love her better than I did." Vanessa and Marcus's child, now Lily's adoptive sibling, chased butterflies through a sun-dappled field. The camera lingered on their matching wristbands. No more secrets. Some weights, once lifted, became wings.